Thousands of people have mysteriously vanished in America's wilderness. Under strange and unexplainable circumstances. Most cases remain unsolved. What happened? Where did they go? Locations unknown.
Thousands of people have mysteriously vanished in America's wilderness. Join us as we dive into the deep end of the unexplainable and try to piece together what happened. You are listening to Locations Unknown.
What's up, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Locations Unknown. I'm your co-host, Joe Irado, and with me, as always, is the guy who built the hospital he was born in.
Oh, wow.
Mike Van de Bogart.
Thank you, Joe. And that is a pretty impressive feat to...
Well, you're a pretty impressive guy.
Thank you, Joe. Well, and thank you to all of our amazing listeners for tuning in. Just a couple of updates before we get going. So, new Patreon shout-outs to Colleen Torgerson, Dusty Lintag, Mary Lawler, Kaylee Caitlin, Dan Wallace, and Lori Oberholzer. So,
Dusty Lintag sounds like something you find in your dryer.
Yeah, Dusty.
After drying blankets.
Dusty.
Sorry.
And we have an episode suggestion shout out to, so thank you to Erica Bell.
Thank you, Erica.
She messaged us on Instagram about a case in New Hampshire, and then I found a few more cases, and we're doing a cold case episode.
Boom.
If you want to call the show, you can call 208-391-6913. You can text it.
We should do a voicemail show next.
We should. So everyone listening.
Let's plan on that. So yeah, call in now. We're going to have a lot, hopefully.
Call in now, and the funnier or meaner, the more likely it will be.
Yeah, we'll play all of it.
We'll play all of it. So
yeah, people keep writing negative comments on Apple. It's like, no, call us and tell us. Give us a chance to respond at least.
Maybe one of us will actually answer too. Really throw you off.
That would be fantastic.
That would be funny. If you want to support the show, you can support us through Patreon, YouTube memberships, premium subscriptions on Apple and Spreaker. We also have some great shows on the Unknown Media Network, so Peanut and Butter and Mountain Podcast, Off the Trails, The Weirdos We Know, Who Runs This Park, and Crime Off the Grid. And we are going to be doing a show with Crime Off the Grid here. We're recording it next Wednesday.
Next Wednesday? Yes,
yeah.
That's going to be a lot of fun.
So it'll be on their feed, so we'll let you know when that's live. And
are we going to cross-post that eventually?
I don't know, maybe.
We should.
Yeah.
It is our network.
Yeah, thanks. We can do what we want, I guess.
I guess we can do it.
So, and you'll notice we're making progress on the studio. We're actually not in the studio. We're out in the woods.
Yeah.
Believe it or not.
Yeah.
It's dusk.
That's why the echo's gone.
Yeah.
We're outside now.
It's the sun's setting. Got that yellow glow in the sky. Some trees behind us.
Yeah. Two different types of flora.
Yeah.
Yet we're in the same location.
Yes. So we have more work to do on it, but we're getting close.
Just every episode, there's going to be more plants until it's just plants everywhere.
Until all you see is our face, like the Simpson meme. It's just our face and just plants around us.
Just on the desk, like everywhere.
That would be kind of funny as a joke.
We should add one plant for the next 100 episodes.
Yeah.
Just 100 plants.
So
let's do that. Anyway. All right, everybody, let's gear up and get out to explore Locations Unknown. Towering at over 6,000 feet in the White Mountains, Mount Washington, home to world record 231 mile-per-hour winds and brutal weather, draws millions with its historic auto road, rare alpine plants, and extreme spring skiing. While most enjoy its trails and epic views, some vanish forever. Join us this week for another installment of National Forest Cold Cases as we explore Mount Washington in New Hampshire's White Mountain National Forest. So, although we're covering a lot of cold cases, we're going to just cover the location profile from the perspective of the most recent disappearance in 2019. So, the name of the location is the White Mountain National Forest. It's roughly 750,000 acres, or the same size as Rocky Mountain National Park and Great Smoky Mountain National Park combined.
It's a big one.
It is a big one. The sublocation is the Mount Washington Corridor at or immediately above the Pinkham Notch. It is in New Hampshire, and it was established in 1918. The National Forest is estimated to get 6 million visitors per year, and it, as we said in the beginning, it has world record winds. So in 1934, the Mount Washington Observatory recorded a surface wind speed of 231 miles per hour, or for our friends overseas, or our hat, 372 kilometers per hour. The highest reliably measured wind on Earth at the time. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
USA #1, baby. It's home of the world's worst weather, USA #1, baby, due to its position at the convergence of storm tracks from the Atlantic, Great Lakes, and Arctic. The mountain often experiences hurricane-force winds, whiteouts, and extreme cold even in the summer. I think we posted a video once of somebody trying to, put a flag out and it's like a 13-foot snowdrift and he can barely move.
I've seen various videos on YouTube of people at the observatory during high winds doing this is how fast it'll blow until it knocks a 6-foot person down.
Yeah.
And it's pretty crazy.
So Mount Washington Auto Road opened in 1861. It is the oldest man-made tourist attraction in the U.S. Visitors can drive the steep, narrow road to the summit. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
There's a high fatality rate. So Mount Washington and the Presidential Range are among the deadliest small mountain ranges in the world, with over 160 recorded fatalities from falls, hypothermia, avalanches, and weather exposure. There are rare plants there. So in the alpine zone, it hosts Arctic alpine plant species found nowhere else in New England. Spring skiing mecca. So the Tuckerman Ravine is famous for extreme spring skiing, with slopes reaching 55 degrees. Thousands flock there each April for backcountry skiing, even as avalanches remain a major hazard. So you're a big skier. Is 55 degrees just ridiculous?
I'm trying to picture in my head how steep that is. But yeah, that's crazy.
It sounds like it is.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they wouldn't say it.
I don't remember. Last time I did skiing in an alpine place was Breckenridge, and I can't remember the slope on one of the runs we did, but it was right before I started going down, and I was having second thoughts.
After it was too late?
Yeah, you're already up there. You have to go down. How else do you get down?
I don't know, cry until they come get you.
Well, you could go down in your butt and just...
That's what I would do.
Look pathetic.
You know what? I like to live.
The whole way down, I was just white knuckling it.
So the first ascent in 1642, Darby Field, an English settler, is credited with the first recorded European ascent guided by local Native Americans. So the first European, the natives were like, yeah, we've been up here.
We do this every day.
We do this every day. It's like people that do Everest. They have all their oxygen bottles and they have their porters. They're like, yeah, we've been up here
And the
twice.
Sherpas there do it 20 times a year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With no oxygen.
And carrying everybody else's stuff.
Yeah, they're filming.
Yeah.
The climate. So when Sue went missing in March 2019, Mount Washington was in full winter alpine conditions. So bitter cold, deep snow, high avalanche risk, hurricane force winds, and sudden whiteouts. Even short distances from Pinkham Notch to the summit meant a dramatic and dangerous change in climate.
I will just say, I probably should have mentioned the subject of the third subject in this cold case episode is Sue. So If anyone's hearing this, like, who is that?
Well,
Like,
we did say it was on the most recent case
Yeah.
in the beginning.
we're going old to
I
new.
assumed. I shouldn't assume though.
Yes.
The region has humid continental climate, thanks to our friends over at the Köppen Climate Classification System, with long, cold winters and short, mild summers. The highest elevation is Mount Washington at 6,288 feet. It creates the Arctic, alpine, subarctic environment drastically different from the lower valleys. Wind, as we mentioned, is very high, so Mount Washington is notorious for the extreme winds, often exceeding 60 to 80 miles per hour in the winter. So that's like their standard, which
Yeah.
is just insane.
Yes.
I was just in Illinois when a 60-mile-an-hour wind hit, and
Yeah.
trees were ripped out. The Home Depot parking lot, they have the sheds on display.
Yeah,
they
they were
were all gone. They're just all over the road. Yeah. So as we said, the world record surface wind speed was 231 miles an hour, recorded in 1934. Snowfall is heavy and persistent with, get this, 200 to 300 plus inches per year on higher slopes. That's wild.
That is wild.
Deep snowpack lingers into late spring, especially in ravines like Tuckerman and Huntington. So that's like, you always hear like snowdrifts getting big.
Yeah.
So what are the snowdrifts like? If you have 300 plus inches of snow,
I don't know.
they got to be more.
It's got to be more.
And then less in the other place because that's where it came from.
Yeah.
So visibility, frequent fog, blowing snow, and whiteouts reduce visibility to near zero. And it sounds like that's happening a lot with that high
Yeah.
wind. Pinkham Notch Visitor Center is at 2,032 feet. It has milder conditions, so the March temperatures are often in the 20s and 30s. The Mount Washington summit in March averages around 0 to 15 degrees Fahrenheit, with extreme wind chills reaching negative 40 or colder.
Yeah. And March is the time frame when this gentleman went missing.
So Sue, that's SOU. When he went missing in March 2019, Mount Washington was in full winter alpine, as we said. So all of those things are happening. Whiteouts, hurricane force winds, the cold, the deep snow, the avalanche risk. Even short distances from Pinkham Notch to the summit meant a dramatic and dangerous change in climate.
You have to be very experienced and comfortable in cold hiking to be able to do something like this.
Well, they're saying the terrain that he was in essentially around Mount Washington is a mix of steep glacial ravines, narrow alpine ridges, and heavily forested approaches in winter conditions, is highly technical, avalanche prone, and extremely difficult to navigate without mountaineering gear. So this environment has been the site of many fatal accidents and is considered one of the most dangerous small mountain ranges in the world.
Not something you start as your first hike.
No,
So
absolutely not. So Mount Washington, as we said, was at 6,200 feet. It's the highest peak in the northeast U.S., so that's probably why so many people are drawn there. Got to climb the tallest mountain. The surrounding terrain is part of the Presidential Range, characterized by steep glacial creeks, exposed alpine ridges, and deep ravines.
And I looked this up on Google because I was thinking they don't have peaks named after every president. Well, they do.
They do?
Yeah. So
That's kind of
that's
cool.
why it's the presidential range.
There you go. Terrain rapidly shifts from dense hardwood and conifer forest at lower elevations to Krumholtz, stunted spruce, fir, and alpine tundra above 4,500 feet. So Pinkham Notch, the trailhead's at 2,000 feet. Relatively gentle valley bottom, but quickly rising slopes. So Tuckerman Ravine, a glacial creek. I always say that word wrong. That's a word I say wrong.
Creek?
I think it's creek.
Crick?
Crick. Cirque. Kirk.
Well,
Whatever. With very steep head walls, 40 to 55 degree slopes, avalanche prone in winter and spring. Huntington Ravine is even steeper than Tuckerman, with near vertical rock faces and technical climbing terrain, also avalanche prone. Geez, you'd be bolted to a wall and just snow comes down and knocks you off.
this just sounds. I mean, a lot of
I'm
times,
not going to go there.
No, we've done a
Definitely
lot of
not in winter.
hiking, and
I'm not going there.
I can 100% tell you, I'm not experienced enough to hike something like this.
Yeah, absolutely
And
not.
honestly, we usually say, "Oh, this sounds amazing, hard, but I'd love to hike it." I don't want to hike.
I wouldn't want to go guided just because, like,
Yeah.
it sounds like even if you're the best, you can just have an accident.
Yeah.
It's so difficult. Lionhead, Boot Spur ridges, they're narrow alpine ridges used as winter routes to avoid avalanche zones, but fully exposed to winds and whiteouts. So if you avoid the avalanches, you're getting blasted by the wind.
just sandblasted.
Yes. The summit of Mount Washington, if you can imagine, it's just exposed alpine tundra with almost no natural cover, littered with talus, ice, and rime formations. Yeah, just fun. I had to climb over those. when I did Kilimanjaro, because
Yeah.
high winds up there and they still had a lot of the snowpack, and it's just super sharp.
Yeah.
And you have to go like through lanes. So types of danger. What do you think? Steep elevation gains from Pinkham Notch to the summit, 42,000 vertical feet in less than 4 miles. Jeez.
That's crazy.
That's insane.
Yes.
Avalanches and rock falls. So if the snow doesn't kill you, the rocks will. Ravines are avalanche chutes in the winter. Rocks can loosen in freeze and thaw cycles. Ice and snow fields. So trails above the tree line are often buried or impassable in March. So that creates a navigation difficulty. Corrins and blazes are buried in the snow. Disorientation in the fog or whiteouts is common. And there's limited escape routes. So if you find yourself stuck and you want to white knuckle it, as you say, Mike,
Yeah.
too bad.
Too
Once
bad.
committed into the ravine or gully, retreat can be impossible without climbing gear. Avalanches, as we said, Tuckerman Ravine and Huntington Ravine are avalanche prone through the winter and spring. And then even if you thought you knew the conditions before you went out, guess what? They rapidly change on you. So they change from calm to sunny to whiteouts and blizzards within minutes. And then you can't retreat. And then an avalanche is on you. And then
Yeah.
the wind's knocking you over. And if that didn't get you, a rock will.
Yeah.
And then there's cold exposure. If you survive all of that, it's freezing. You can get frostbite in under 10 minutes during windy sub-zero conditions. And then lastly, if none of that gets you, there's black bear, moose, and coyotes.
Yeah. So
They're just waiting at the bottom. They don't even have to hunt.
I think if anyone listening has summited Mount Washington, especially in the winter, I think right now, just give yourself a pat on the back.
Yeah, call our number. Let's have an interview. I feel like anybody that's done that is going to be worthy of interviewing.
Or at a minimum, call and leave a voicemail about your experience summiting Mount Washington in the winter, because it sounds epic.
Yeah.
And I can't imagine very many people do it.
I want to live vicariously through that.
Yes.
Because I'm not going to.
That is wild. So
I like the mountains, but while you're doing that, I'm going to go to the Caribbean.
yeah, I like hiking in alpine conditions, and I want it to be challenging, but part of it is also a vacation.
Yes.
So I do want to enjoy myself a little.
Challenging, but not deadly.
Yes. So,
All right, let's get into the character profiles for some of these cases.
all right. So we are going to go from old to new. So we've got a really old case here. Our first name is John M. Keenan. So his estimated birth, not quite sure. It was 1893 or 1894 because he was age 18 in 1912.
All right.
He went missing on September 18th of 1912. And shockingly, it was during a whiteout near the summit at 10 a.m. So he was a male, like I said, 18. Descriptions of him, because the case is so old, we have very little detail about this gentleman. But witness Howard Lightfoot described a young man about 20 with a slightly receding chin and a nose a bit larger than average. And he said he was drooling at the mouth, which is likely because he was cold and wet, and he did not appear bright looking. So that was a description of him when the search was going on. People were just a little more cruel back then, I think.
Yeah.
So, and road inspectors that saw him noted that he had a vacant expression and arm waving. So this case is really interesting. We'll get into the timeline here in a second. You'll see what I'm talking about, but there were so many different chances he could have been rescued, but wasn't. Like I said, we don't know his height, weight, hair, eyes, or anything else about him, really. He was reported to be afraid of darkness and easily frightened by animals and woodland hazards, and they described him as fresh-faced and newly in the workforce. So,
Sounds like he didn't like being outside.
no, and these people, they weren't very nice when they described him. So.
Jeez.
Clothing and gear last seen in. So at the time of his disappearance, he was working on a survey crew. He had a coat, hat, and he was carrying a back flag. Whatever that was, I should have looked that up. And
Probably a flag on his back.
I guess. Oh yeah. They probably told him, like, go stand in that spot. And so that's what he's wearing. He really didn't have any survival gear with him because he wasn't out there hiking. He was actually working. And at one point, he was sighted on the 20th along the Pinkham and Glen Road. He had a pink and white striped shirt on with attached cuffs, Cufflinks were lost. He had no coat or undershirt, despite the bad weather, but he did have fashionable street shoes. So, I love descriptions from this time period. Fashionable street shoes.
Yeah, that was like their way of telling how, like, what?
Unprepared he was for being out there. Yeah. So personality, like I said, he was described as very timid in the woods, and he, fresh-faced, and he was new to rough field work, and he was teased by the crew, apparently. And medical issues, none documented prior to the incident, but he was seen at one point incoherent and drooling, and this obviously is consistent with possible exposure or head injury. Occupation, so he had recently finished high school in Charleston, Massachusetts. He worked as an elevator operator. Those were a thing once. I mean,
that was a thing once.
No, there used to be people.
I know.
Yeah,
I know.
Would stand in the elevator all day and
good
push
comment.
the button for you or make it go up and down. It's kind of funny. But then he joined the Boston and Marine linked survey crew on Mount Washington in mid-September of 1912. Experience in the wilderness, obviously very limited. This was pretty much the first time in his life he had been above the timberline, and he was unfamiliar with how the trails were marked or anything about being out there. Obviously, not really any training on what to do if you got lost. Experience in that location. So this was his first day at the COG base, and he was sent up with surveyors on the 18th, and he was last seen on the south side of the summit cone. So, yeah, he was green as you can be. So, jumping right into the timeline.
You know what that reminded me of when you said that?
What?
That was the elevator. It was the John Mulaney. I was thinking who it was. John Mulaney, when his stand-up, he said, I once was on the phone with Blockbuster Video, which is a very old-fashioned sentence.
That is, yeah.
All right, go on. Sorry.
Okay.
Yep, continue.
Continue. So it is, real quick. I saw a video online. So you grew up in the 90s like I did.
I did.
There is a
We're a similar age.
Yes. There's a museum, I believe, out in Denver that is just for the 90s. So it has everything from the 90s in like a museum setting. They have a real life Blockbuster. They have like the set of Friends.
That's awesome.
They've got all like the different video games and technology from the 90s.
I have it in a safe. A pristine, like 100% perfect Blockbuster membership card.
Oh, do you really?
Yeah, it was like, it's like I never used it.
Why do you still have it?
I saved it for some reason, and then I found out, I was like, this is great because it's like perfectly laminated. It's like not peeling. It's not discolored, anything.
Yeah.
Like that's going to be worth something, probably never, but
Yeah, probably never.
but I really like looking at it sometimes.
You should donate it to that museum.
Maybe we'll have it be like a giveaway on the show.
Yeah, there you go.
Or maybe I'll keep it because I like looking at it.
We'll frame it and put it in the studio.
Actually, I could put it in the museum and be like, donated generously from locations unknown.
Big tax write-off.
Yeah.
So, all right, we got way off track. Back to the timelines. Summer of 1911, 1912. So why was he on the mountain? I feel like I just did this. He worked for a company called Boston and Maine RR under Charles S. Mellon, and they were surveying a bold plan for an electric trolley line to the summit and a new summit hotel. So a 21-man survey crew led by H.S. Jewell worked around the summit cone and west slopes. The work began on July 4th, 1911, and continued to the next summer. So obviously, Mr. Keenan, 18 from Charleston, Massachusetts, like I said, had just finished high school, and he had briefly worked as an elevator operator, and he joined this team in mid-September. So it's now Friday, September 13th, 1912. This is the first day on the job for this gentleman, and he's at the base of COG. He was assigned odd jobs near the COG base. He was noted for wearing, like I said, fashionable street shoes. They are really caught up on that. And it's like,
That's so wild. They're just like, he always had fashionable street shoes.
Yeah.
That John.
so it keeps coming up in the research I did. And he had a pink and white striped shirt. And these were details later confirmed by witnesses that saw him. So it's now Wednesday, September 18th of 1912. Morning conditions on the summit cone. It was overcast, 40 degrees Fahrenheit, minus 40 degrees Fahrenheit.
Jeez.
50 mile per hour winds. The survey party working on the south side of the summit cone near the Allen Ormsby marker, and they were facing the lakes of the clouds. So that is wild conditions.
Yeah.
50 mile an hour winds.
And
minus,
that's 1912. That's not with modern
Yeah.
clothing, technology.
Yeah, that's cold.
Yeah, it's no bueno.
So Keenan's role that morning, he was a back flag man. He was stationed 100 feet from the transit, and around 10 a.m., a sudden cloud / whiteout rolled in, and when it thinned, he was gone. So he was there, and then this quick whiteout came in, and when it blew through, no one could find him. The crew waited around for about 30 minutes. They were calling for him. They fired guns to signal for him. One guy even telephoned the base from the summit. So no luck finding him. So they did initiate an immediate response later in the day and that evening. And they searched until nightfall. They didn't find any sign of him. They rang a summit bell steadily all night. A steam plant whistle at the COG base sounded every minute, probably for all the people trying to sleep that night. It's a lot of noise, but you would think you would hear,
yeah, they're trying to help guide them back.
Yeah. And lanterns were strung around the base camp by in case he had merged. So, and at one point, the B&M HQ wired back, spare no expense, find the boy. So
Well, that's good.
Yeah. They
wanted to find the fashionable street shoes.
Yes. So, find the boy. It's now Thursday, September 19th of 1912. So, Jewell led surveyors, COG crews, and staff of Among the Clouds to sweep the Alpine zone. So they were grouping through dense clouds above the timberline, but no trace was found of him. So it's Friday, September 20th of 1912. And let me just read that again. So Jewell led surveyors, COG crews, and staff. It must be in the clouds. So obviously the clouds are rolling over the mountain.
Yes.
They
were among the clouds.
Yeah, I didn't write that properly.
That's probably how they wrote it back then.
Yeah.
They were among the clouds, searching far and wide.
In the radio voice.
Exactly. That's how they talk. Sweeping the Alpine zone, groping through dense clouds above timberline. No trace was found. See, that's exactly
perfect.
how they were probably doing it.
Yeah. Friday, September 20th, 1912. So the valleys this day enjoyed sunny, warm weather while fog and ice continued on the heights. So fog glazed rocks with ice by Friday. 11 a.m. So this was the Pinkham Notch Road near Darby Field. Fire Warden Briggs encountered a disoriented.
You guys can't see this if you're listening, but my mouth is just floored. It's open. You did it.
I know. I'm getting better.
It's because we're outside.
Yeah, we're outside.
We're in the woods.
Air, breathing in this fresh air. I love it. We got to record outside more often.
Yes, we do.
What park are we in?
Don't ask dumb questions.
So
Milwaukee National Forest.
Yeah. So yeah, they found a disoriented young man in a thicket near old logging roads. The man said it was Friday, that he'd been out 2 days and fallen 30 feet into a ravine and was looking for Keenan Farm. He asked only for spearmint gum, and again, he wore a pink and white striped shirt without a coat or undershirt, like I said earlier, despite the terrible weather. And Briggs judged him sound in body but confused and sent him north to Glen House. So this is the first interaction he had with somebody. He's obviously lost and experiencing some level of hypothermia. And I just can't think of why this gentleman didn't bring him with him. Like, he said he was in sound in body but confused. That to me seems like a pretty big red flag.
I think they didn't understand what hypothermia did to the or maybe altitude hypothermia, brain swelling,
or it was just
it's just that way,
or it was just more of like fend for yourself,
yeah.
So whatever. Late morning on the same road, state road inspectors George Turner and Dr. Guile saw a young man with a vacant expression, waving arms and pointing up at Mount Washington. They didn't end up stopping, unaware the man was missing. So there was another encounter with him where he could have potentially been rescued, and he wasn't.
Jeez.
It's now noon near Glen House. Howard Lightfoot, a Bethlehem chauffeur trailing the inspectors with their baggage, picked up a young man matching the description. So now he actually has been picked up by someone on the mountain, but unfortunately, after 2 miles southbound, the passenger asked to get out near an old lumber camp by Darby Field, then asked how far to Charlestown or to Franklin. Lightfoot later recognized the face from a Boston Herald photo as Keenan. So this is the craziest case we've ever covered, where the person that ultimately went missing had several encounters where he could have been rescued and then actually was picked up and was transported and then asked to get back out.
Jeez.
So he was saved and then got back out. So kind of crazy. And contemporary wire reports from the time summarized the mountain search being hampered by a thick bank of clouds, which is very consistent with what the survey crews were experiencing Thursday and Friday. So it's now Saturday, September 21st, 1912. The search pivots to Pickman and Glen Corridor. A newly formed team at the Glen House interviewed Warden Briggs, and they concluded that he saw Keenan and searched intensively between Glen House and Darby Field and the adjacent woods, but did not find any sign of him. It's now Sunday, September 22nd of 1912. So a massive search kicked off and the family arrived. So Lawrence Keenan, John's father, arrived from Charleston, rode the cog to the summit, then down the carriage road to join the Glen House search. Over 100 searchers at this time were scouring the corridor. They waded the Peabody River and even drained Milliken's Pond and still didn't find anything. That night, Mr. Keenan returned to Boston, abandoning hope, unfortunately. So it's now late September. A lot of follow-ups, rumors, and misses started happening around this time. So after the big push on Sunday, a small cadre of guides and surveyors kept working gaps. Lightfoot returned with his detailed account, strengthening the belief that Keenan reached the Darby Field lumber camps area on Friday midday. A second sweep of that territory sadly found nothing. So now it's about 1 week post-disappearance. This is when it gets really crazy. So night cries were reported near Glen House. The source was unknown. A supposed sighting at Woodstock near Franconia Notch also fizzled. Keenan's mother told the Boston Journal she'd heard apparently from a clairvoyant that John was alive in a Western hospital. Unfortunately, no evidence surfaced. So 2 weeks post-disappearance, the Littletown Courier reported a water dipper and knapsack was found on Mount Washington and was presumed his. Surveyors clarified Keenan had neither on his first mountain day, and this turned out to be a false lead. On November 26th of 1912, this would be the final major lead in the case. The Boston Post relayed a letter implying a patient matching Keenan was at Saint Jean de Dieu, which is in Montreal, and Jewell traveled to investigate. It proved a clerical miscopy. The superintendent actually wrote no such person had been admitted, so that turned out to be a dead end. And that was an insane asylum, by the way. I forgot to mention that part. So other notes about this case. So
It's a wild series of events.
Yeah. I mean, he could have been rescued multiple times.
He was rescued.
He was picked up and was being transported and then got out. And there was even a chance that he was still crying out for help a week later. And it all turned out, they never found him. So, later compilations record simply that John from Charleston, Massachusetts, a surveyor, wandered the cone of Mount Washington on September 18th, 1912, and never was found. His likely route off the cone inferred from witnesses and weather. So he likely went downwind. East pushing winds of 50 miles per hour or more would tend to drive a confused person off the south and east side of the cone. likely into Tuckerman Ravine, then out along the Cutler River to the Pinkman Notch Road, which lines up with the Briggs Turner Lightfoot sightings near the Darby Field and Glen House on Friday. So the biggest question was, why wasn't he recovered despite reaching, road? And, there was a ton of misconnections, and, the Lightfoot dropping him near the Darby Field. There was heavy fog and ice above the timberline masking tracks. And, he could have slipped back into the woods and fell, never to be found. A local coroner, the narrative suggests, might have ruled death by complications attempting to the sudden onset of dread. So that's interesting. So major theories quickly here. The biggest one is hypothermia and being lost on the summit cone. So it was the sudden whiteout that rolled in is when he initially went missing. This would cause low visibility, wind over 50 miles an hour, very cold sub-zero temperatures. He likely wandered off the marked Cairn route and became very lost. This was the first time above the timberline. He was poorly dressed, and he had no experience at doing anything like this. And most likely hypothermia exhaustion could explain what happened to him. Another theory is the injury from fall. This is another very possible one. He told Briggs himself that he'd fallen 30 feet into a ravine, so he potentially had already fallen and could have been injured. And Joe went through the train in this place. It sounds crazy.
I can't believe he made it that long.
Yeah.
It's he just kind of wandered around and survived.
Yeah. So very likely he could have, in a very hypothermic state, fallen and into one of those ravines and could have been covered by a rock fall or an avalanche. And he's never never was found. So there were also, obviously I said there was alternative speculative leads. So we had the Montreal Insane Asylum rumor. We had the mother's clairvoyant story. There was local gossip about night cries near Glen House and a supposed Woodstock sighting, but none of that was ever substantiated. So, 1912, it's 2025. Remains have never been found of this individual. So that is our first case. What do you think, Joe?
I think he succumbed to the elements essentially, and it sounds exactly like he had hypothermia, and I can't believe he lived as long as he did. Yeah,
clearly he was confused and definitely had, I think he fell and might have had head injury or.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
He wasn't right. So
when I was climbing Long's Peak, there were two people in our group that ended up having early onset hypothermia, and they were ahead of us. I've told this story before, but it was years ago, so we had a lot new listeners, but they were really far ahead of us, and I was with another person waiting at a junction for someone who was slower to make sure they wouldn't miss the route.
Yeah.
And we finally linked up, so we're all going around the corner heading to Boulder Field and Long's Peak, and all of a sudden the two people that were ahead of us that were going to go set up camp were walking back. They didn't have their stuff with them. And we're like, where are you going? They're like, oh, to the parking lot to get new clothes.
Yeah.
And this is almost nighttime, hours, you can't make the parking lot. And they left all their gear. And they were in different clothes, and we were in a snowstorm, so they were soaking wet.
Yeah.
And they had gone in, set up a tent, changed into dry clothes, and then walked out to go back to the car.
Okay.
And I just kind of turned no, you're coming with us. We're going here. And we just got them warm and back in the tent. But they were just going to wander back down thinking oh, we're just going to go to the car real quick. And it was, an 8-hour hike.
Yeah. It causes you to just not really coherently think. I thought I put a map in here of what some of the places he might have gone. And I think I only...
You put it in HTML format?
Yeah, and I only uploaded one of the cases, so that's my bad.
Okay.
I had some cool maps with the map markers and the search zone.
I'm so glad you told everybody that. Now they're disappointed. You could have just left it out.
Yeah. So, there's probably not much you could have even searched for that case. But our next case is moving into 2007, so we're into this millennia.
Yes. They're not talking like this no more.
No, we're not. So the name of our next subject is Kevin Scott Race. Date of birth, likely around 1960 or 1961. Date missing, he was last seen on September 9th of 2007. So very interesting. Our first two cases happened in September. And he was reported overdue on September 10th of 2007. He was a male, age 46. Body description, he was 5'11", 195 pounds, brown short hair, blue eyes. He had a mustache extending down the sides of his chin as described by the New Hampshire Fish and Game Service.
A fantastic description.
Yes. So, clothing gear he's last seen in, we don't really have any idea of what he was wearing. And personality, he sadly had written a handwritten note that was reportedly found at his home stating he was looking for his final resting place, which initially led authorities to consider a suicide scenario. But
it sounds in line with what I would think too after hearing that.
Yeah, that right?
When you're 46? Yes.
So medical issues, though, he had no recorded medical issues or mental health history reported by the authorities. So business, occupation, hobby, he was a businessman. He was associated with Custom Cordage LLC of Waldoboro, Maine. And there was a civil filings around this time reported by the local newspapers that identified a business dispute with his partner. Experience in the wilderness, unknown. Experience at this location, unknown. So we've got this one's a little interesting. Might be the theory. I won't say it yet, but this might actually be one of the first cases where this specific theory is true, which we've talked about it a lot, but I don't ever think we've had a case where it's what I think it is. So,
okay.
So just a little background on Kevin and the situation he had going on. So this is kind of between 2002 and 2007. And I want to preface this by saying this is alleged. There were never any actual court cases because he disappeared. So allegedly, Race's business partner, David Bird, alleged in a civil filing that Race embezzled $515,000 from the company across several years. Coverage on this also referenced an earlier criminal allegation of $250,000 the year before the disappearance. So the filing date was cited as January 8th of 2008, and an article discussing it ran January 30th of 2008. So these are allegations. Like I said, there's no post-disappearance criminal education in the public records. So all alleged.
Well, can they if they don't have anybody to bring before the court?
No.
Because that's a very specific number to just be random allegations.
Yeah.
That's a specific number like an audit has been done.
Yeah. So reports described him as a very experienced outdoorsman who had hiked Mount Washington before. He lived in Dexter, Maine, which is about 2.5 to 3 hour drive away. So this was very familiar to him. And like I said, allegedly he was facing a lot of court pressure. So he was potentially facing felony theft charges for embezzlement. And he was actually due in court and was going to be facing severe financial and legal pressure. And like I had said, there was that note that was found in his house, handwritten note that some have speculated was a suicide note, but they obviously don't know. So start the timeline. It's Sunday, September 19th of 2007. This is really the last confirmed sighting of him. So he had told his girlfriend he was going for a day hike. Around 2:30 p.m., he was seen at the AMC Hermit Lake Shelter at the floor of the Tuckerman Ravine on Mount Washington. This really would be the last place, last known location. So it's Monday, September 10th of 2007. It's the evening. This is when he was reported overdue from the day hike on Mount Washington. His girlfriend obviously made the report. His vehicle is located at the Appalachian, or his vehicle was very quickly found at the Appalachian Mountain Club, AMC Pickman Notch Visitor Center parking lot. It's a mouthful. And then what? I having a hard time getting that one out.
Yeah, you did.
So at his Woolwich home in Maine, this is where they found that final resting note note at his house. So it's now Wednesday, September 10th, 2007. So this is kind of when the search gets going. So they really had really nothing to indicate a direction of travel. So the authorities kind of mounted a broad-based search of the Cutler River drainage, which included Tuckerman Ravine and Huntington Ravine. So agencies involved in the search at this time were New Hampshire Fish and Game, Appalachian Mountain Club, Mountain Rescue Service, New England Canine SAR, and the U.S. Forest Service. So they were working trails, viewpoints in the woods. The Army National Guard came in and assisted with aerial search using a Black Hawk helicopter. So they had people on foot in the air, and they had canine units on the ground. Obviously, it's Mount Washington, so weather is always a problem, and it was a problem during this search. So the summit was shrouded in rain and clouds, and people described it as like looking for a needle in a haystack. So very tough conditions to search in. It is now Tuesday, September 11th of 2007. So this is when Race had been scheduled to appear in Lincoln County Superior Court on embezzlement charges. And this would be the day after he was reported missing.
What a coincidence.
Yeah. So he didn't show up for court that day. It's now we're doing Friday to Sunday, September 14th, September 16th of 2007. This is when the search is suspended and the ruse theory is publicly acknowledged. So very interesting. After several days of intensive ground and air operations without any new clues, New Hampshire Fish and Game suspends active searching and acknowledges investigators are weighing whether the circumstances, including the note, could indicate an elaborate ruse rather than a suicide or accident. So,
I have theories.
You have theories, okay. Family believes that it was suicide, and authorities have kept the case open as a possible foul play or voluntary disappearance.
The family, all with new clothing and shoes, believes he killed himself.
Yes. So, obviously, on January 8th to January 30th of 2008, this is when his business partner, David Bird, files a civil suit in Knox County Superior Court alleging the embezzlement. And so from September 25th, 2008 to Sunday, December 1st, 2008, one of the local newspapers publishes a notice on September 25th inviting the public to celebrate to a celebration of life for Sunday, December 1st, 2008 at 1 p.m. at Bath United Methodist Church. So I think the family believes that he passed away and kind of had a funeral. But from 2008 to today, there's been no public report of a recovery of remains or a confirmed sighting in the mainstream local coverage. There's also no listing of him in NamUs, the Doe Network, or the Charlie Project databases, which is very unusual for missing persons cases. But due to this case, it's not as clear cut that he is actually missing. So the biggest theories are, the first one is suicide on Mount Washington, and obviously that's mainly because of the note that was left. And Mount Washington's rugged terrain, steep ravines, and unpredictable weather could easily conceal a body even after extensive searches. And despite all of the large-scale search involved, nothing was ever found. So that is a possibility, because he was technically doing a day hike. Accidental death is also a good possibility. We don't really need to cover too much. It's pretty self-explanatory. Mm-hmm. The terrain is wild. Even the best hikers could have an accident in a place like that. And the the one that a lot of people are getting hung up on is the voluntary disappearance or a staged suicide. So, like I said, he was due in court on a felony and embezzlement charges, serious crime, and he also faced a civil suit. And people are, investigators and the press have noted the possibility the suicide note was a ruse designed to mislead authorities and give him cover to vanish. So the fact that no gear, clothing, or remains were ever located, despite the massive search, does give some weight to that scenario. And the note, all the legal troubles he was potentially going through, and the lack of any evidence that he was in the area, I think strongly suggests he might have faked his own death to get out of that. So what do you think? I think he faked his own death.
Yeah.
I think this is the first time.
You're like, what do you think? Here's what I think.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
No, I'm looking more towards that. I think that it's a strange coincidence that the day before he's due in court for embezzlement, he decides to go on a hike. Leaves kind of a note that's like looking for my final resting place. Yeah. And it's like, then like went to Thailand. Is it non-extraditionary there, or
he went to one of those countries?
Exactly, where it's like you can just go live out, on a couple $100,000 like a king for a while. Yeah. I'm sure he went somewhere like that. And I don't know if the family's in on it. Maybe they're like thinking that might be the case and we're eager to.
I'll leave the family out of it.
Yeah. I don't know. That just too many coincidences.
Yeah. We always talk about voluntary disappearance and we always like, that's not a thing. That didn't happen. But I really think this case is very likely.
That's where I'm leaning.
Yeah.
Like he left on his own accord.
Yeah. It's just too coincidental that he decides to go on a day hike, like you said, the day before, his felony court appearance. So, all right. Well, third case, and this was the case Joe was talking about with weather and terrain. So, Porth Stephen Sue, date of birth unknown. He went missing on March 10th of 2019. He was a male, age 21. Unfortunately, we don't have really much information on his body description. Clothing and gear he was last seen in, it really was not documented. The family told media a receipt in his car showed purchases consistent with a solo winter attempt of Mount Washington. So new coat, new pack, ice picks, ice tools, boots.
Like he just bought all that stuff recently. Like, I'm going to go climb the mountain. I need these things.
Yeah. So, and after, Joe's description of the weather and terrain, I wouldn't advise, newer people to hiking to do this. So,
I can't. Yeah. I mean, it's, you look at his age, like, sure, he could have been climbing and hiking, but I'm guessing he was brand new at this.
Yeah. I mean, 21. Yeah. Pretty, I mean,
at that skill level. Again, I'm sure there's some young teenagers that have climbed tons of mountains and are probably experts at this, but that number, I think, grows as you get a little bit older.
Based on the description of this time, this part of the season of Mount Washington, you need to be really experienced. We could be wrong. Like I said, we want some people that have summited Mount Washington in the winter to call and leave a voicemail about your experience, because it sounds crazy. And winter conditions around this time,
no good.
So one of the quotes was, immense area, deep snow, and lack of specificity. So they didn't know his destination. That obviously hindered the search. Another no from Joe and I, tell someone what you're doing.
Yeah, you need to know where you are.
Yes. And he, had limited hiking and winter experience per the family, so not very experienced in general, and to do this type of hike is a big red flag. So personality, we sadly don't really know much about his personality from news reports. Family did state that he had struggled with mental health since his teenage years, so that could play a role in what happened here. Experience in the wilderness, very limited. He had done a handful of day hikes, but no documented winter mountaineering background. Experience in this location. Fortunately, we don't have any documented evidence that shows he's hiked in this area prior to his disappearance. So,
New to the area, new gear,
yeah.
just taking a crack at it. And
Yeah.
that's where he chose to go.
Yeah. So, pre-disappearance, I always like to understand in some of these cases why were they there? So why was Sue on Mount Washington this day? And there really isn't a definitive motive for why he was there. Family and friends told media that they found, like I said, a sporting goods store receipt inside his car showing purchases of a new coat, backpack, ice picks, boots, suggesting his intent to solo hike up Mount Washington. Other family had noted that, like I said, he had mental health struggles in his teenage years and speculated that this may have played a part in the decision to go to the mountain, possibly seeking solitude or escape. So, very interesting. There are some unsubstantiated reports on social media that indicated he had an argument with his father on March 8th of 2019 regarding the cleaning of his room, and that he stormed out of the house, after which he was not seen the next day. So this conflict with his father could have also started the ball rolling too on him trying this hike. So Friday, March 8th, 2019 is when our timeline starts off. It's the morning in Dracut, Massachusetts. Pardon my ignorance here, but the abbreviation for Massachusetts is MA, right?
Yes.
Okay. I'll cut that out.
No, you won't.
No, I
You're
won't.
leaving that one in.
So this is a family account. So this is the last known in-person sighting. So it's at their home. And this was later reported by friends and family via social media posts, but it's not in the official releases. So, and like I said, that other statement about him having a fight with his father also was not in any official releases. So it's unverified. Just keep that in mind. So it's now daytime in the Mount Washington area. New Hampshire authorities later say they received a report that a person matching Sue's description might have been seen hiking in the Cutler River drainage. So that is the Tuckerman-Huntington Ravine watershed on this date. This was unfortunately an unconfirmed sighting, but they did use this to guide the search because they didn't really have a lot to go off of. The weather at the time, so the high that day was 9 degrees. The low was minus 12. Average wind, it was a light 49.5 miles per hour with wind gusts up to 74. So
That's just insane.
yeah, that's wild temperatures and wind for just an average march on Mount Washington. So just a little context on the potential route he may have taken. So he would have gone from Pinkham Notch, which is the standard winter ascent. It heads towards Tuckerman Ravine Trail and then Hermit Lake, then typically Lionhead winter route towards the summit. It is now Sunday, March 9th of 2019. Mount Washington Auto Road. So the cool road Joe talked about, there was a second unconfirmed sighting. So this sighting places a person matching Sue's description on the auto road. And this actually became one of the most promising leads, and searchers kind of adjusted their search, but unfortunately, no clues came from this search. So little weather on the summit this day. High was 19, got a little warmer. Low was 0. And the average wind that day was only 36 miles per hour with gusts up to 70. So,
That's so wild. That's like so windy all the time.
yeah. And, just gusts up to 70, near hurricane force.
Yeah, that's insane.
Yeah. Wild weather. And I just put the weather in there just to give people an idea of the weather that Sue could be facing, and the searchers. So, the searchers are out in this stuff too, which is wild. So it's now Sunday, March 10th of 2019. Authorities at this time state that Sue has been listed as a missing person. And by 3:30 p.m., a friend's public post shared online says Sue's phone briefly pinged a tower in the Westford, Chelmsford area that afternoon, then went offline. Unfortunately, this was unverified by officials, and I just included it because in this day and age, more recent cases, there's a lot of family and friends posting things online that don't always necessarily get verified or confirmed by official reports. But I feel it's interesting to include that information. I just want everyone to know, these are unverified by law enforcement. So, weather on Sunday, we're getting warmer, high of 25, low of 4. We had, let's see here, 3.5, almost 4 inches of snow that day. Average wind speed was 47 miles per hour with wind gusts up to 94. So, and periods of very low visibility and causing strenuous travel. So, lovely Sunday, Sunday on the mountain. It is now, that was Sunday, March 10th. It is now Saturday, March 16th of 2019. This would be when his vehicle is located. So the vehicle was located at the Pinkham Notch Visitor Center. He drove a Honda Civic, and it was parked on the east side of Mount Washington. So again, this is an important clue. So the search efforts kind of shifted towards, the area where his car was found. So, because like I said, at the beginning of this, they didn't really know he was maybe going to go hike in the area. They really didn't know where he was going, what his plan was. So it's now Sunday, March 17th of 2019. A full-scale search now is going on above the tree line. We have a lot of agencies involved. You have the New Hampshire Fish and Game conservation officers. You have the USFS Snow Rangers from the Mount Washington Avalanche Center. You have Mountain Rescue Service, MRS. You've got Mount Washington Observatory and the Mount Washington Auto Road, all providing logistics for moving teams above the tree line. At this time, the search involved about 20 personnel, and conditions were cited as the search was called off pretty quickly as far as searches go, and the main reason was weather. It was just putting the searchers in danger, which I don't blame them. So the last known location areas tied to the Cutler River drainage lead and the Auto Road lead were searched, but no clues were found. And by the end of the day, the search was discontinued pending additional information. So a pretty quick search. And the summit weather on this day, I can see why they canceled it. So high of 2, a low of -6. Average wind speed was 61.5 miles per hour with gusts up to 110.
Jeez.
So, God, this has to be some of the craziest weather we've ever covered on one of our cases. So, just wild weather. It's now Monday, March 18th of 2019. So the search was publicly suspended on this day, and officials cite the immense area, deep snow, and lack of precise destination, and crews were standing down pending new information. So the family reviews the car at this point, and this is where they found that gear receipt, and these were family statements to the media that talked about what gear they had. They told reporters that he had recently gone to a sporting goods store and purchased, a new coat, new pack, ice pack. I went all through over that before. And it seemed like he was planning to solo summit Mount Washington during these conditions. So not good. And the family continued private searches into mid-April of 2019, and they were checking nearby towns and stores. So a couple additional notes on this case before we get the theories. So, despite periodic attention in the regional media and mountain safety channels, no official recovery or confirmed sightings have ever been announced since the March 2019 search was suspended. And as of August of 2025, based on all the public records, nothing has been found of him. So community efforts, there are Facebook pages and podcasts like ours continue to cover this case to raise awareness, but none of it's led to any new clues in the case. So official theories, one of the biggest ones is lost on the mountain. So the most widely held assumption is that he attempted a winter ascent, became lost or incapacitated due to the dangerous conditions, ultimately succumbing to exposure or injury in an unsearched area. I feel like that's highly likely based on the weather conditions.
Yep.
Another one is sadly suicide. And this is just really because of his known mental health struggles that he's had since he was a teen. And some have speculated that he may have hiked up there in a deliberate act rather than a simple adventure gone wrong. But obviously this remains unconfirmed by official sources. Another one is voluntary disappearance. So another line of thought suggests that he chose to disappear using the trailhead as cover. A cell phone ping in Westford, Massachusetts, not far from his home, occurring after his disappearance, is cited as supporting this theory, though it's unverified. And one just of pure speculation is foul play. Some community members point out the timeline gap from the family argument to the vehicle's placement at Mount Washington and suggest someone may have staged the hike by leaving a receipt with hiking gear to mislead investigators. Obviously, this is pure speculation, and there's no official backing behind this theory. But flyers did surface in the townies from implying possible involvement from relatives, which was also unsubstantiated. So very kind of weird stuff going on in these cases.
Yeah, it sounds more like something that they thought up.
Yeah, someone may be seeking attention.
Yeah,
something like that.
It sounds more like an angry teenager got in a fight with his parents and wanted to go do something for control.
Yeah,
I remember being a teenager, and when you get in trouble, you're just like, I'm a big man. I'm going to go do something. I want to go do something like that, like extraordinary.
Yeah.
And he probably went and bought a bunch of gear and said, I'm going to go summit a mountain, and was unprepared. I really think it's just lost in the mountain.
Yeah.
I don't think it's anything spectacular other than just he was woefully unprepared for the conditions he was about to encounter.
Yeah, I mean, they called the search off very quickly because of those conditions. And search teams we've covered a lot of cases where they've searched in some really nasty weather.
30-mile-an-hour winds is no joke, and that was like average.
Yeah.
And then with gusts to 60, 70, 100.
Yeah.
That's
crazy.
I couldn't imagine surviving in that with the brand new gear and not knowing how to do it.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. I think this last one is sadly just an accident, an exposure. So.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone, for tuning into our show. Please log on and let us know what you think about the 3 cases that we covered. We appreciate all of you for listening and sharing locations unknown with your friends and family. Be sure to like and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube, where you can find the videos of each episode. Also, if you'd like to support the show monetarily, please visit our website or Facebook store to buy some sweet, sweet swag. And we have the new website available. What's it called? The hikercash.com.
Yeah.
hikercash.com to get some cool stuff like locations unknown playing cards and a blanket. Additionally, you can subscribe to our Patreon account, YouTube, and Apple, where you'll have access to special events and additional shows for paid customers only. You can also watch the videos on YouTube, which are great if you want to watch me and Mike just struggle through all the things we struggle through. And lastly, when enjoying the beauty of nature, whether backpacking, camping, or simply taking a walk, always remember to leave no trace. Thanks, and we will see you all next time.